As we move forward, I would like to request our Regional Director, Sir, to kindly felicitate our panelists for the day.
Dr. Benjamin Langdon, Professor of Northeast Hilly University. Shri Audrey Konglam, District Skill Development Officer. Dr. Michelle Makri, Director of Donbosco Youth Center. With this, let's begin with our next panel discussion on the theme Human Capital, Investment in Education, Skill Development and Employment. It will be moderated by Bhumika.
Hello. Thank you so much, Ms. Pallavi Singh. Good afternoon, everybody present out here, honorable dignitaries, our panelists for the day, and my dear youth. I am Bhumika Chetri, and I'm going to moderate the session 2, which is Human Capital, Investment in Education, Skill Development, and Employment. With this, let me introduce you to our panelists today. We have panelist number 1, Dr. Benjamin Langdon. He is Associate Professor in Department of Tourism and Hotel Management, Northeast Hill University, Shillong. He has teaching and research experience of more than 20 years. We would like to welcome Sir to the session. Please we have a huge round of applause for Dr. Benjamin Langdon. Our panelist number 2, Audrey Konglang Ma'am, Skill Development Officer of East Khasi Hills District, representing Meghalaya State Skill Development Society. She has been a part of skill development for more than decades, implementing skill development. We would like to welcome ma'am to the panel today. And our panelist number 3, we have Father Michael Makri. He is a Salesian priest of donbosco and a dynamic youth leader based in Shillong, Meghalaya. He currently serves as the director of donbosco Youth Center, Shillong, where he is actively involved in empowering young people through skill development, education, and value-based formation. With this, we would like to start our session 2, which is Human Capital, Investment in Education, Skill Development, and Employment. As we get to know human capital, it is the ability of the human or the human resources to contribute to economic development. And with this, we would like to see the investment in education, which is one of the major factors, and employment and also skill development at the end. The thing is, a developed nation or a developing nation requires more than infrastructure or more than just natural resources. The main important thing is human resources and human capital as well. And today we are discussing on the same thing. Firstly, I would like to put on a question to Dr. Benjamin Langdon, sir. Sir, you have been an associate professor in Department of Tourism and Hotel Management, and you have an experience of more than 20 years in this teaching field. I would like to ask, what's your view or insights on today's theme? We have human capital, investment in education, skill development and employment. And since there's a rise of tourism and hotel management in our region, Northeast, so what's your insights and take on that, sir?
Thank you so much for that question. Well, to get straight to the point, when we say human capital, basically we mean that every human being, we sitting here, everyone here in the hall, we are all resources. And when we say that we are a resource, it means that we should have this ability, this capability to produce something, to do something, to provide a service. Then only you will be considered as a human capital. So human capital basically means a human being who is a resource. Now, for this resource to have this capability, this ability to produce something, to provide a service, investment in education then becomes extremely important. And education basically is everything, because a person can be literate or illiterate, but there is no one who is uneducated. Everyone is educated in their own field. Whether you have gone to school or not, you will always be educated through life experiences, through interaction with people, how you interact and respond to the environment around you. Everyone becomes educated. And education is the only way in which we can really make our human capital take off. These two things, they go together. Now, at the center of these two concepts is another construct which we call skill development. There was a time when we used to talk only about knowledge. And we test knowledge, we have a mark sheet, and the mark sheet tells the reader or the employer, prospective employer, about the quality of this particular person, the capital, the level of education that he has. In due course of time, we said knowledge is not enough, we need skills also. That is why this aspect of skill development. Today, we are using a term called competency. Competency means a combination of three things: knowledge, skills, and attitude. You see, because a person can be very knowledgeable, but if you don't have the skills, your knowledge, basically, I'll not say it's useless, but your knowledge will lack teeth in society. But at the same time, we find people who are very knowledgeable, very skillful, but they do not have the attitude to work, to take initiative. They do not have drive, motivation. They do not want to do certain things in life. So even if you have knowledge and skills, if you don't have the attitude, again, it's not going to work for you. That's why we say now it's all about competency. People should have competency, because we say if a person is competent, it means that he has knowledge also, he has skills also, and he has the right attitude also. And the last one is employment. You see, if we are productive as a human capital, we are educated, and then we have the right competencies with us, employment opportunities are always there. Let's not look only at the government sector or even just the private sector. There are areas where all of us can be employed one way or the other. That is why it's important to talk now in terms of competency, because that attitude is the ultimate factor, sometimes which is more important than knowledge and skills also. However, we talk a lot about education, investment in education. One of the areas that we actually have to look at is mental health issues. There's no point making our youth educated and try so hard investment in education and talk about skills and all that if their mental well-being, is not there. It is not on the right track. Mental health issue, depression, anxiety is one of the major health problems we have today. Many of our youths, we are somehow, suffering from this, to be very blunt. And I think the percentage is pretty high. I'll not mention here. So unless and until we take care of this particular aspect also, it's very difficult for a person to be productive in the correct term of a capital or skill or competency. I think this is one aspect that sometimes we miss out on. We talk about all these other things, but one of the very important pillar, which is the mental health issue, depression, anxiety, we forget that. Unless and until we deal with this particular aspect also, then it'll be very difficult for anyone to work productively. That is why it's very good now in schools and colleges, it has been made mandatory that you should have counselors. But sometimes a counselor cannot meet the needs of everyone. A school or college can have thousands of students, right? So me as a teacher, I can try to play my own role here, but I think it requires a collective effort. Education means also mental health. And I'm sorry to say this is one aspect which we actually do not talk about too much. We are too much into science and numbers and sociology and everything. We forget about this. If this is not in place, everything will have no meaning at all.
Thank you so much, sir, for the amazing highlight on education, skill development, and employment. And the most important, the mental health, which is mental health in some areas, it's still considered as a taboo, which is not talked often. Even young people like us, we hesitate a lot to talk about mental health. Me, myself, as a student, and I have also been an activist in mental health thing. So, me, myself, as per my research and stuff, I still feel that there is a lack of open conversation about this particular topic. Thank you so much, sir, for highlighting it. The youth are present here today. They get this insight that it is very important to talk about mental health as well. Here I would like to put a question that as a professor, you already said you're trying your best from your end to connect with the students in this thing. I would like to know what other things which you like to implement or which you wish to be there so that the mental health is talked about, and how, as you already mentioned, that mental health is very important by linking it with education, skill development, and employment. So, what do you wish to, that this mental health is considered as a very normal topic and the young people can freely talk about?
It has to start from the family. Because if they don't share in the family, then it'll be very difficult for them to share anywhere else. I know there are situations where students are more open with friends in schools and colleges and universities, and they don't talk much in the family. That is also all right. Teachers are there, friends are there. But I think we should talk in the family. It has to start from the family, because your friends are there for some time, your teachers, your school, your colleges, they are there, but for some time. Your family is there with you forever. So you need to discuss this and start with the family. And here is one very important point. Basically, there are two types of people, introvert and extrovert. Now, if you have a mental health issue and you're also an introvert, then this becomes sort of a red flag, because then you're not talking to anyone about it. That is why I prefer for the young minds today, for the youth, to actually be extroverts. You have to be extroverts. Then only you will start talking about everything to other people. And this again has to start from the family. Many times we come from very conservative families and we are taught in the family itself, do not talk too much. Okay, do not talk too much, do not be too much of a blah, 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 blah sort of a person. Be an introvert. Now this has got its own plus points, but I think when it comes to mental health, people, the young minds, the youth will have to be extroverts. Then only you will share with your family. Then only you will share with your friends, with your teachers. Okay? And it's very important for family now, for parents to be friends with their children. This principle of carrot and stick, where you reward them when they do well and you beat them when they don't, I think it still has its validity even today, but it's more important for us to be friends with them. Unless we are friends at the same level, it becomes very difficult to discuss with them on these type of issues. And mental health is something which normally the young people do not like to look eye to eye when they talk. So I always used to say something like this: the best time to talk about mental health to your children is when you are driving your car and your child is sitting next to you. What will happen is that you don't have to look eye to eye. You are driving your car, she is sitting over there, but the message, it gets through, right? So that is the best way to talk about mental health. Simple solutions, practical solutions. Let's not talk too much in terms of big things that we have to look at, big investments that we look at. The world has problems, and the solutions to most of these problems are actually micro solutions, which we can implement right from, to start with, always from home and always from the family. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. With this wonderful insight, we get to know that investment in education, skill development, and employability requires a healthy human, and mostly us, human capital. It requires a healthy human capital. And basically, it's not just about physical fitness or physically health, but then it's all about mental health as well, because everything is in the mind. And to make our nation, if we dream about a Viksit Bharat, we would like to have healthy young people in our nation. And basically, it's not only about physical health and stuff, it's also about mental health as well. So thank you so much for bringing out this topic. We are really happy to hear from you. Next, we would like to move to Audrey, ma'am. She is a skill development officer. Ma'am, I would like to know your insights on skill development in youth, as we are moving towards Viksit Bharat. And we would consider that youth are the leading leaders, not just for tomorrow, but today as well. So how a youth from our nation can contribute towards Viksit Bharat while through their skill development. And you can give your insights on skill development in our region, Northeast as well. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Bhumika, for this platform. Yes, speaking about youth and human capital in terms of skill development, first we need to understand what human capital is. When we speak about human capital, it refers to the skill, the knowledge, and the ability of young people, who contributes to the growth of the nation as well as to the state. So investment in education and skill development is very, very important to strengthen the human capital, and it also improves, productivity, innovation, and creativity. So when we speak about education, of course, education builds, a strong foundation of knowledge. But in terms of skill development perspective, training ensures students or make a youth a job ready and market ready to enter into a job force. Now, in a state in the state of Meghalaya, to be very specific, where the larger chunk of the population are youths. So investing in skill development will really promote human capital, because this will ultimately support sustainable development, and also it will also contribute to the vision of the Viksit Bharat of 2047. Yes.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your wonderful insights on skill development. Ma'am, I would also like to know how can we reduce youth unemployment by aligning curriculars with industry needs, since you are in a skill development office. So my question is, how can we reduce youth unemployment by aligning curriculum with industry needs through online platforms or vocational reforms? How can a youth be employed through their skill learning? See, our education system has been based from ages that, as sir said, knowledge is very important. But then today we get to know our degree is not only the factor which will keep us going. Skill development is also a necessary factor as well.
Right.
So what's your insight on how can we address the skill development in our curriculum in school level or college level as aligning with national education policy as well?
Right, okay. Yes, aligning education and skill development is very, very important, to make youth job ready and to, future ready. Especially like in the state of Meghalaya, when we have seen that the government is playing a very important role in promoting skill development initiative in the state. And the kind of trainings and the kind of, skilling activities that is being implemented is not aligned to the education system that is being introduced in our schools and colleges. So, but how do we achieve this? How do we bridge this gap? So now we can only bridge skill training and education by incorporating vocational trainings in schools and colleges, which is more aligned to industry needs and which is more aligned to the kind of the job demands that is there in the market. And emphasizing, when we talk about vocational training, we can emphasize more on hands-on training, which are more practical based. And we can also, promote vocational training by connecting schools with industries, like in terms of internship programs, in terms of apprenticeship programs, and introducing, on-job trainings. And yes, when it comes to skilling as a whole, the government is trying to implement training which are more demand-driven, you see, rather than supply. And yes, we are trying to, the state of Meghalaya is working very much on, decentralizing all the skill training program in the state. That means the kind of skilling that we implement in the state should match the industry need, as well as should match the aspiration of our youths.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for the wonderful insight on the topic. Now I would like to address Father Michael Macri, sir. You've been the Salesian priest of Don Bosco and a dynamic youth leader, and you're serving as director of Don Bosco Youth Center. The question is, how does Don Bosco Youth Center, Shillong, approach skill development and value-based formation to empower youth in Northeast India, since we have a gathering of all the youth from Northeast? So let them have the insight of how Don Bosco Youth Center is contributing, and let them get an insight on that thing as well.
Thank you very much to our beautiful and gorgeous moderator. Let us give her a big round of applause. And good afternoon to my dear panelists, and to all of you, my dear young people, especially to our organizers. Very nice. You organize, you bring young people like this for the betterment of our region. How many of you can whistle? Raise your hand. How many of you can whistle? How many of you can smile? How many of you can smile? You have got the capacity in you. You have got the capacity in you. You have got so much of talents. You have so much of energy. And that is what is beautiful in our region. That's why so many people are jealous of Northeast India. It's because we are so talented. We are so smart. By the way, how many minutes do I have? How many minutes do I have?
So you can speak, you have plenty
Oh,
of
okay,
minutes.
very good. So prepare yourself, because you know I am a priest. I can give lecture the whole day also, so prepare for that. Thank you, thank you. Is that a compliment, or is that... oh, okay, thank you. Let me begin like this. You know, there is this monastery, this beautiful monastery. But the sad thing is that in that monastery, there are no more monks, because people don't want to become monks anymore. They enjoy life outside, so they don't want to enter the monastery anymore. The director of that monastery got a very, very bright idea. He said, let me go to the market. I will announce free food, free lodging for all those who come to the monastery. And so he went to the market, he made the announcement, and the following day, thousands of young people, boys, stood in line to enter the monastery. And the director was very, very happy. He was smiling. He was welcoming all of them. He was welcoming all of them, and he said, welcome to the monastery. Here in the monastery, everything is free, but there are few rules and regulations, he said. Number one, you have to keep silent all the time. You have to keep silent. Secondly, you have to also work. Thirdly, you have to also pray. And fourth and most important rule in the monastery is you cannot talk with one another. You can talk only 2 words in a year, and that also with the director, not among yourself. Is it clear? And many of them said, yes, sir. 2 words, right? Yes, sir. And with that, he put them inside the monastery according to their own rooms. In January, February, March, April, December 31st, this director rang the bell and said, those who would like to come and say those 2 words, please come and say. So many of them came out from the room. The first one came and said, praise God, 2 words, right? Praise God. The other one came and said, my God. And like that, many of them. Last one, he looks quite shabby, not really dressed. His eyes was sulking. Maybe whole night he was on the phone. He came, he looked at the director, and the director asked him, what is the 2 words? He said, food bad. Food bad. Okay, I'll make sure your second year, I will make the food better. And so the second year continued. January, February, March, 31st December, he rang again the bell. And he said, those who would like to say those 2 words, please come and say those 2 words. And again, many of them came out. Again, my God, my Lord. And our friends came again. Again, with sleepiness in his eyes. The director asked him, what is your 2 words? He said, bed hard. Bed hard. The bed is hard. In the first year, he complained about the food. Second year, he complained about the bed. Okay, well, I will give you a nice mattress. From tomorrow onwards, you will be sleeping like a king. And so he was happy. He went inside. Now, this is the final year. January, February, 31st December, he rang the bell. And those who would like to say the 2 words, please come and say it to me. This time, all of them came out. One said, my God. Some said, thank you. And our last friend came from behind, and he said, I quit. I quit. This is the words of the director. Yes, I know you will quit because you don't have the spirit of endurance. Right from the beginning of your stay here in the monastery, you were only complaining. Complaining about food, complaining about this, about government, about chief ministers, about prime ministers, complaining, but you don't have discipline, you don't have the spirit of endurance. That's why you will quit. And I'm glad that you quit. Dear young people, firstly I ask you, how many of you can smile? You smile and many of you raise your hands. How many of you can whistle? How many of you can play football? We have so much of capital in the Northeast India. But what we lack is discipline. What we lack is the spirit of endurance. Our moderator asked me about how do we do in the youth center. I'm very, very sad to say this. We failed terribly in the youth center because we cannot make young people disciplined. Few years ago, before the COVID, we have lots of training in the youth center. It's not only in Shillong. We have all youth centers in different parts of Northeast. I know in Itanagar, I know in Kohima, I know in Mizoram, I know in all the places in the Northeast India. We have our youth centers, either run by the donbosco fathers or other organizations. And even from the Skill India, we have so many this kind of programs there in the Northeast India. But the problem is this: we don't have discipline, we don't have the spirit of endurance. So let me tell, since she asked me about Don Bosco Youth Center, I said we failed. Prior to COVID, in the youth center, we have trainings on computers, on IT, on media. That's why we have got some of our staff here who are doing the media for us. We run also a TV channel. We have so many courses. We have tailoring, we have embroidery. In 2019, we trained only in this tailoring sectors almost 500 young people. And out of the 500 young people, I selected 23 of them to go and work with JJ Mills industry in Chennai, one of the very, very famous manufacturing industry in Chennai. The jersey that you are, see the light has gone off because it was frightened of me. The jersey that many of the football clubs in Europe are wearing are actually manufactured in JJ Mills in Chennai. And so the director, or rather the proprietor of that company called me. He said, "Father, I need your people from the Northeast to come and work in this industry." I sent 23 of our young people, mostly from Khasi Hills and Garo Hills, since I'm taking care of the area this side. With the salary of almost 18,000 in hand, free food, free lodging, Besides that, if they do well, they will also get remuneration almost every day. So I sent 23 of them. Flight ticket, everything free, and they reached Chennai. After 1 week, the leader called me. Father, we are coming back. I said, why? What happened? The salary, you are not getting the salary? The salary is too small? He said, no, Father, the food is very pungent. The food is very pungent. Thank God she was in Chennai. If she came to my office, I would take out my shoes and slap her on the head. That is the problem with our young people. We don't have discipline. We don't have the spirit of endurance. And that's why we fail. That's why we cannot come up. I did my studies most of the time outside India. You know, guys, you know, boys and girls, young people who are here, once you completed your class 10, you have to be on your own feet. No parents will give you pocket money. Forget about even your school fees, about your college fees. You have to manage on your own. Including me as a priest, when I went to study, of course, in my beloved country in the Philippines, you know, the school fee was so expensive. I cannot afford to have money. So what did I do? The whole day I work in the television channel, ABS-CBN, with GMA, with what is called TV5. The whole day we were working, and midnight, by 8:30 our classes will start, and it will get over till 1 o'clock, 1:30. You sleep for a few hours, you work again. And if they are well placed in society, it's because they don't complain, they work hard, they were disciplined. So I think this is what I really request from all of you. You have got talents, no doubt. You have got intellectuals, no doubt. You have got degrees, no doubt. But as I said, we will all fail, from the institutions, from the government, till all of you, because we are not disciplined. We talk about corruption. Why corruption? It's because we are not disciplined. If I'm not disciplined in small things, definitely I will not be also disciplined in big things. So that's why, let us, it talks about education. Let us educate ourselves to be honest, to be disciplined, and to work hard. Am I too long? Okay. Yeah. So maybe that is what I would like to say for the first opening remarks.
Thank you so much, sir. That was such a wonderful insight regarding discipline and while linking with the youth. I personally, as a youth, I believe that discipline is a major factor for keeping us forward in every aspect of life. It's the determination, discipline, dedication, and it defines that a youth is working, and that's how we achieve the vision of Vikshit Bharat. And sir also gave so many great examples, and I hope that our youth are enriched by it, and I hope that our youth will be more disciplined, more dedicated, and move with more determination, because we are representing our region in the central, in India. We have to make our voice echo. As I've been saying since morning, we are the leaders, not for tomorrow, but from today itself. My next question to the panelists is that with the rise of automation, how should our current curriculum evolve to ensure we aren't just teaching students to perform tasks that AI can do better? It's for, anybody can answer that.
All right. Okay, yeah. So speaking about AI, we can say that AI has become an integral part of our life, especially with the young generation. So talking in terms of skilling perspective, AI, boost the learning perspective of our young people, and it creates a more convenient platform for our youth to learn, because it provides online platform learning as well as simulations. So it also supports it gaps between the the aspiration of the youth as well as the learning perspective. So using AI in the learning perspective, I think this is very, very important. And we are also living in a digital era, so to speak. So AI has become very important tool for the young generation to take up training as a learning perspective. And also, you know, AI also helps in assessing the kind of training that they are attending, and also helps in monitoring the kind of training that they are following. So this is what my point of view of, you know, incorporating AI in skill training. Yeah.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Any other panelists would like to add?
So I took a test in the class, and this was some time back. Because now, like our moderator said, the challenge is to teach and to test students beyond AI, what AI can do or help us, right? So I took a test in the class. And the condition of the test was this: you can bring your mobile phones, you can bring your tablets, you can bring your textbooks, you can bring all materials for the text. It's basically what we call an open book test. So you can bring all your materials with you. There will be a question, and you have to answer that particular question. The entire class was so happy, excited. Now this will be a walk in the park. Okay, it's like so much fun, because whatever the question will be, definitely some answer will be there. If not in the book, in my mobile phone, in my tablet, in my laptop computer, I can generate the answer. So they all sat, excited, happy. I wrote the question in the whiteboard, and the question was simply like this. This was some time back, okay? And the question was, do a SWOT analysis of NEHU. They all looked at me and said, this is unfair at that particular point of time, because you'll not find this material anywhere, okay? By the way, can anyone tell me the full form of SWOT, S-W-O-C, anyone? Strengths and threats. But now, you know, just for information of all, now we are not using T anymore. We are not using threats anymore. We are using challenges. That's why I said SWOT. I didn't say SWOT. I said SWOT. The T has been replaced by C, because when you say threats, you use the T. It has got a very negative connotation. It's a threat. But when you say challenge, it means that it is there, but it is something which I can overcome. New books are using the terminology SWOT. They are not using SWOT anymore. Anyways, besides the point. So the students said, this is unfair because we will not find this anywhere. But this is exactly the point that we have to deal with right now. In the age of AI tools, where all answers are available as teachers, when we teach and we train the young minds, this is not about us as teachers, it's more about you as young minds, so that you will not be too AI dependent. You will maintain your originality. You will maintain your ideas. You will have that thing, that spirit within you, that I am better than AI. AI will just supplement. But your human self, your human capital, your resourcefulness, that has to remain. But of course, today, if you type in AI, any AI tool, right, SWOT analysis of NEHU, you will find answers. Because these students have done, and they have put it in the digital space, and once you put it there, and the AI tool is trained on that particular data, you will get responses from that particular data set, right? So right now, teaching learning has come to a stage where it is more about students than us as teachers. It's more about maintaining the original thought of the student. You know, in finance, some of you may be from BBA, MBA, BCom, MCom backgrounds over here. At one point of time, we used to say compute profit or loss. Okay, compute the net worth of the organization by preparing a balance sheet. Prepare some ratios, profitability ratios or solvency ratios, something like that. That was during our time. We actually had to calculate, and we got marks for the calculation. Now you don't have to calculate anymore. The software will do it for you. So now the question becomes, these are the ratios for you, this is the solution for you, now interpret. Right? This is more about you as students, so that you maintain that self-worth, that I am not 100% AI dependent. I can do things on my own. But a piece of news for you. Just last week, I was checking Perplexity. I'm sure you're all aware of Perplexity. Perplexity now will also interpret for you very nicely. Earlier, there used to be errors. Now, it will interpret for you very nicely. So now the question of saying, these are the ratios, now interpret, even that is slipping out of our hands. So now we'll have to think of something else. It's for the good of the young minds to maintain your original thought, the thought process, cognitive process where you say, I am using AI, but I am not 100% dependent on AI. And that is where we have to move from here onwards. And today, it is impossible to think of doing business without leveraging on the platform of technology. Gone are the days when we used to say, let's do business and not use technology. Now, every business will have to be leveraged on the platform of technology. Unless we do that, we will not be successful. Look at all the unicorns in India. Some of them have failed, of course, but some of them are still there. All of these unicorns, all of these organizations are a fusion of conventional business ideas with technology, right? When you can fuse these two things together, you'll be able to survive in today's market, otherwise not. You will have to fuse. Food delivery is a very good example. Take any food delivery. It's basically a fusion of what? That conventional idea with technology, and we get food at our doorstep. And that's why I used to say, suppose, let's take tourism, for example. Let's say all four of us here have got tourism background. Now, if I want to start a business, then I will not be looking at father as my partner, or the moderator as my partner, or madam as my partner. I already have that particular background. I don't need 3 more people for that. I will partner with whom? I will partner with someone from IIT. I will partner with someone who has a BTech degree. I will partner with someone who has an electronics degree, an engineering degree. It'll be a fusion of things. Then only I'll be able to survive. Because now I cannot think of doing anything at all without, leveraging on the platform of technology. Is AI good or bad? The solution, the answer depends from person to person. It depends upon how you use it. But what I used to say all the time, should we use AI? We should. There's no way out, right? But use AI in such a way that you are not the slave of AI. You are still the master of AI. Maintain your originality. Every week I take time when I prepare for my classes to check what Perplexity is saying on a particular topic, so that when I go to the classroom the next day, I will not say the same things. If I start saying the same things, they will all disappear from my classroom. I mean, why should we go for his class? I can get all information for free. Okay, I can use the time for his class to work somewhere else and make some money out of that. So we have to teach beyond whatever AI is giving the young minds today. So this challenge is for everyone. It's for us, it's for you, it's for the entire nation. In the end, like I said earlier, I will end concerning AI. We should use AI. I use AI tools, but I make sure that I am not a slave of AI. Rather, I'm the master of any AI tools that you can think of today. Thank you.
What I wanted to say, both of them have said. But again, let me remind you that I am a priest, and so I will quote from here and there from the Bible, especially by agreeing to what Dr. Benjamin said. Each one of us, we are unique. We are special. And that's why when God created all of us, He created uniquely. None of us are similar. Although I look like, what? Like Jackie Chan. I'm not Jackie Chan. Because God have created me to be me. God have created you to be you. And that's why we are so unique. We are so different from each other. Even twins. They look very identical, but they are not the same. They are unique. They are different. That is what the purpose of God for creating us. And dear friends, why do you want to duplicate someone? Why do you want to duplicate someone? If God have created you so uniquely, so specially. He has given you a special brain. He has given you a special capacity. Why do you want to copy others? This is the question. That's why if you look at AI, AI is asking us to copy, to be like somebody. And why, like Sir said, why do you want somebody to control you? When you have been given the freedom to be unique, to be special, why do you want someone to control you? So that's why AI is good. Definitely. Technologies are good. Definitely. They make life easier. But don't depend on them. Let them only be tools. Let them only be helpers for you to become more specialized, to become more unique, to become more to know yourself deeply. And that's why, again, I will say from the Bible, some of you may not be Christians or so, you will not read, but maybe you can go to your internet and check. You read the Gospel of Luke chapter 10, no? Gospel of Luke chapter 10 onwards, I think verse 38 onwards, you will see there are two characters, Martha and Mary. Those two characters, many of you will be familiar with that. While Mary was spending time talking to God, Martha was busy preparing. And who gets the better praise from God? It's not Martha who was busy. It was Mary who sit listening to Jesus, listening to God. Dear boys and girls, dear young people, let that Martha who is working be AI. You spend time with yourself. Spend time with your capacity, with the intellect that God has given you. AI, let her be only a tool to help you. So this is what I would like to say on the role of AI and technology with our young people today. And as I said, if we are all disciplined, if we trust on ourselves rather than on AI, we will be given the glory. We will reach the climax. We will reach where no one has reached. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Father, for your amazing insight. As a woman in STEM, I would say that AI has its own merits and demerits. While we link with our theme, which is human capital and investment in education, skill development and employment, I've seen that AI has been helping us in the field of education. While we drive past to the days of pandemic, it was all this technology stuff which brought us closer to our teachers, far away from each other. And also in skill development that AI has been helping. We can see that each and every day there's a new discovery, new technology coming up and there. So it helps in skill development. And obviously if there's a skill development and education to the youth from the urban or the rural areas, definitely there is employment as well. And obviously, as all the panelists said, that we have to use AI in such a way that it helps us. It does not turns us into its own slave. There is one popular statement that it's not the AI who takes your job, it's the person who uses AI wisely takes the job. And with that, I would like to conclude our AI topic on skill development and education. And as I already said, as we drive past to the days of pandemic or any other events in history like wars, and recently also we can see the trends that even though many great countries have great infrastructures, many GDPs, but at the end, it's the human capital which is very necessary. During the pandemic, we could see that it was the skill that mattered. The doctors who have been working day and night, treating all the patients, and all those developers who are working so that the technology can be good, so that the students or the young people can witness the events happening around the world while sitting inside the comfortable space of their house. We can see that the human resource and the human capital is a major factor and that plays a major role in the development of a nation. And but at the same time, as a youth, I get to see that when we talk about skill-enhanced or vocational-oriented jobs, I see that our youth hesitate to choose that, right? I think many of you guys have been there or have seen that even though that is going to benefit us in long run, even though that is giving us guaranteed employment, but still some of us hesitate to do that. So, as somebody who's expertise in this field, our dear panelists, what's your take on that? Because at the end of the day, we need to invest in human capital, because we've seen the examples that even though you have great infrastructures, but nothing comes in front of human capital. It's very important. So what's your take on all these things which I've said right now?
So based on the past experience in terms of skill development, I have seen that, there is a great mismatch of the aspiration of the youth and the kind of skill training that we are implementing. And having said that, we have seen that, the kind of training that is being implemented is more supply-driven rather than demand-driven. And when we looked at, in the past experience that I have gone through, because in terms of, skill training in the state of Meghalaya, our focus is mainly on employment link as well as placement link. So when we, receive the demand from the industry, say like for example, there is a requirement of 200 students in a hospitality sector. So we post an advertisement and we try to mobilize for that particular sector. Of course, because it's a free training that is being conducted, given by the government, we have lots of youth coming forward, availing all these skill training. And when we send them for placement, at the very last moment, they backed out, and some of them, they stay for just few weeks, few months, and they come back. So when we see all this, and we realize that that is not really aspirational, you see. So that is why the government now has come up with a very important initiative where we try to decentralize all the skill training as per the demand. And decentralizing does not happen only at the state level. So decentralizing happens right at the district level, at the block level, as well as at the village level. So we try to implement training which are more demand driven, which is related to the aspiration of a youth, and we also try to promote traditional skills as well. These are dying trades, and we try to promote. And when we in terms of bamboo craft and tourism and hospitality, weaving, these are the kind of trades that we really try to promote. And yes, conducting a skill need analysis is one of the very important aspects before we implement any kind of training. And in the state of Meghalaya, talking from a district perspective, of course we do have the district skill training plan, which right at the district level, we planned out what kind of training that we need to implement at the district level. So these training planned, we work in convergence with line department, trying to, collate the data and conducting the skill need analysis, and then we come up with a very robust and concrete skill training plan for the district. So in that way, we try to match the aspiration of the youth and the job market that is already available in the market. So by doing so, we realize that we have very less dropout. And yes, when it comes to placement as well, we've seen that very minimal students are quitting their jobs. They stick to the job because it matches their aspiration, and in this way it boosts, it really helps the youth in aligning the aspiration as well as the kind of training that we implement. So yes, conducting the skill need analysis is one of the very important aspects before we implement any kind of skill training, and also to have a very proper district plan, not for the just for the state, but right for the district as well as for the block and at the village level. I think this will help a person sustain in whatever they are trying to do, and also match the aspiration of our young people with the right kind of training that is being implemented in the state. Yeah.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Is there any panelists who would like to add on this?
Yeah. Organized way of putting all these skills in various, in various institutions, either by the government or private sectors, it's Very, very important, and I think in the state of Meghalaya, since Mom is here, she knows very, very well. It is really well organized, I would say. No, even placement, they have lots of placement, not only within India, within Northeast India, even outside the country, and that is really beautiful. But also, it needs to be from the part of our young people. No, you have to be focused. Dear young people, you have to be focused. It's very, very sad, as I said in my opening remarks. Of course, we don't have the spirit of endurance, we are not disciplined. And thirdly, I would say, maybe we are not focused. Our young people are not focused. We are easily being controlled by someone, maybe emotions, maybe peer pressure, I don't know what. That's why we change our focus from time to time. And that is one of the reasons we don't get job opportunities. Or rather, we don't get job, we will not be employed. No? Many of us are doing that. I see this, I'm saying this with the experience that I have there in the youth center now for 10 years as the director of the donbosco Youth Center. I see young people, today they come and study computer because maybe they want to do some office work. After 2 months, they will quit this computer, even completing their exams. They will shift to another course. And when you ask them, they said, no, my friends are all in aviation. And so they will want to go for aviation. After some time, you will see that same girl or that same boy, you will say, he will sit in another course. Maybe in cruise. Seen in the youth center, we have cruise also. I saw this boy sitting there and asked him, why, I saw you in the DCA, in the Diploma for Computer Applications. Why now here? You have not even completed your exam there. He said, no, father, there are lots of people, no, asking for placement in cruise, in Vietnam, in, I don't know what idea he got like that. And so I think this is also the problem with so many of us who are here. We are not focused. And that's why we lose the direction. You know, I will tell you, when I studied class 4, that time, that idea of becoming priest has not entered in me. And I used to go to school from home, walking sometime 30 minutes, 40 minutes. So when I passed my class 3 very, very well, my mother told me, I can give you whatever you ask since you do well in your class 3. I asked my mother for a bicycle. Those days, to have a bicycle meant like you're having an airplane now. No, we are the richest people. So I was driving my bicycle from home to school. Proudly driving that bicycle. One day, as I was going to school, one girl in class 3, my crush, she came on the way, and seeing her, I lost focus. I was in the paddy field in no time. Fully wet, uniform, books, everything wet. Although I was trained by my brother, he said, when you ride the bicycle, no, look at the road, look at the, what they call that, those pedals and the brakes, be focused. That day, when that girl came just in front of me, I lost all that, and I was in the paddy field. This is also what is happening with our young people today. There are so much of distractions, technologies, AI, and all that kind of things. That is the reason, even those structures are there, even the job opportunities are there. Many of us are unemployed because we are not focused. So I would like you, please be focused. Stick with one aim in life. Or maybe 2 at least. But don't be sometime Sachin Tendulkar, and then after that Ronaldo, then after that maybe Virat Kohli. No, young people, that will not work. Be focused. Stay focused. And I can assure you, if you focus, employments are already there. I can assure you. The government is doing all way out to give employment. Of course, not in the strict sense of government job. But then tourism we have. There are so many facilities actually which the government is giving, but we are not employed. It's because we lack focus. So I would request once again, be disciplined, be endured, and be focused. You will be the champion.
Thank you, Father.
Yes, very short. From the perspective of Madam and what the state government is doing. See, the fact of the matter is, to be very blunt, anything which is given for free, people do not value. That is the fact of life. So just to make a point as to how we can get out of this particular situation, let me tell you a small story, which I think some of you are aware of this. So this person opened a zoo. Okay, he opened a zoo. It's just a story, fictional. He opened a zoo. And then the entry fee was rupees 100. Entry fee was rupees 100. No one came to his zoo. Entry fee was 100. ठीक है? After some time, he reduced to 80 rupees. Still, no one came to his zoo. All right, fine. After some time, he reduced to 50 rupees. Still, no one came to his zoo. He was a bit disappointed, but he never lost heart. He said, I will do something about this. So he kept on reducing the ticket price, the entry fee. Then it came down to 40, to 30, to 20. And last of all, he said, entry is free. Okay, after he got tired for some time, he said, entry is free. When he said entry is free, everyone started coming to his zoo. Okay, it was overcrowded. Lots of people inside. But then this person had to make money. You know what he did? He closed the gate. He locked the gate. The gate of the zoo, he locked. And then he released a tiger. Okay? And then he said, if you want to go out, pay 500 rupees. All right? Okay? So if you understand, I think you should be able to understand. Anything which we get for free, I get for free. Anything that we give for free, madam, people do not value. We have to find a mechanism where they will know this is not for free. And if it is not for free, then they will be serious. They will be determined. They'll have drive. They will have motivation. But what that mechanism could be, because in government schemes, we think about social welfare. So on one end of the spectrum, you have social welfare. On the other end of the spectrum, you have a situation where you want to ensure that people remain. This way or that way, people remain. We have to find a balance somewhere in between. We need a mechanism. Till the time we are able to derive that sort of mechanism, these sort of issues will always be there. Because driving the young minds, motivating the young minds is actually about that practical situation that they face. All of you are Gen Z. I think the other day I saw Gen Beta or something. I don't know, but at least Gen Z, I'm pretty sure about that. I'm pretty sure almost 100% of you are all Gen Z. And Gen Z are like, they look at situations in a very practical way. They are interested in practical problems. They are interested in practical and workable solutions, right? So that is what they look at. Unless we are able to bridge that particular, generational gap that we can say, none of us here are Gen Z, maybe you are, I don't know, right? Then this type of issue will always be there. So we need to actually get to the ground, look at the practicals of it, offer practical solutions, which it can resonate, in their thinking. Unless it captures their cognition, their thinking process, I think we are in a very bad shape.
Thank you so much, sir. So, we asked our young participants to put on some questions to the panelists. We received a huge amount of questions, but then it is so difficult for us to choose because due to time constraint, we cannot stay here all the time and we just questions and questions. So we just picked up a few of the questions from the participants' side. So we'd like to continue with the questions. I would like to call upon Palash Boro from Assam, and please give his question.
Good afternoon, sir, and all the panelists. My question is that, is brain drain a failure of our human capital system?
He's asking, is brain drain a failure of our human capital system?
So young minds leaving India. From brain drain, I think we were talking about the other term last few years, brain gain. Is brain gain a problem? A drain a problem? Then brain gain, of course. Brain drain, of course, is a problem. Because we need the talented minds to be here in the country, to contribute to the growth of this nation, to the gross domestic product of this nation. So is it a problem? Direct answer is yes. But where exactly lies the problem? Because to most of the people, they don't see, they don't see opportunities for one reason or the other. There are many, which I think we cannot discuss here because of time constraints. They don't see opportunities here. They don't see green fields over here. So they like going to Western Europe, to the States, to Australia, and to all these other countries that you can think of, right? So is it a problem? It is definitely a big problem. I had interaction some time back with a colleague who works in the university, and he is from South India. And he said something very interesting to me. He said, in Tamil Nadu, in Chennai, people don't look at other things in terms of employment. So what do they look at? Then he said, in my state, most of the young minds, okay, they want to get their technology degrees done. Okay, they want to get their software degrees done, and they are in the lookout for a plane to America. They're looking for Silicon Valley. He said, this is what we look at in our part of the state. But then the question for him, the counter question I had for him is that, why are the people from Chennai so looking ahead to leaving the country? He says, because the money is there, the opportunities is there, growth is there, investment is there, everything is happening over there. So definitely it's a problem. But I think now we need to, if not bring those people back to our country, at least the people now, we need to provide them with appropriate opportunities so that they do not, try to leave the country and somehow do something within the country itself. This is, of course, a policy matter, which, moderator, madam, will need a different discussion for this, because there's a lot to discuss concerning brain drain and on the other side, brain gain. There's a lot to discuss, but for now, at least that much is what I can say.
Thank you so much, sir, and thank you, Palash Boro.
Well, add a little bit to that. Yes, very much it is a problem. But then question you need to ask yourself. No, we Khasi people here, we said we love our country so much, we love our state so much. Hari lajong kat bamon. No, we love our this one so much. But then the moment you talk about drain brain, why do you leave the country? Why do you leave your state? Instead of doing that, the best person is work hard, make your village shine, make your district shine, make your state shine, make Northeast shine. Anyone who works will not die of hunger. Anyone who works hard will not die of hunger. So definitely for me personally, this drain brain is a big no. It's a challenge, it's a problem, and I discourage all of you, dear boys and girls. Work hard, make your place, your village, your state, your district shine rather than go somewhere else. You know what? When I finished my studies in the Philippines, I was offered to work in GMA. I was offered to work in CNN Philippines with a big salary. I said, no, I go back to Shillong because that is where I need to contribute to my people. So yes, it is a challenge, and please don't fall into it. It's a problem, don't fall into it. Work for your community, work for your society, work for your own people.
Thank you so much, Father. Next, I would like to request Aman Agarwal from Sikkim to put on his question. Can we please pass the mic?
Good afternoon to our most lovely panelists out there. I'd like to respectfully direct my question to Reverend Father Michael Macri. Father, if education and skill development are considered investments, how should society measure their true value and the return on this investment, economic productivity alone, or the overall growth of human character and creativity? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that question. I heard from the panel, from our moderator that our time is over. So the purpose of education is to make you a better person and an honest citizen. Forget about everything that we have said. Be an honest citizen and a better person. That is what education is all about. So all that we are trying to say, all that we're trying to spend, is to make you and me a better person. So that is my answer. For the rest, you can think about it, what leads to that answer. To be a better person and an honest citizen. Thank you, all the way from Sikkim.
Thank you very much, Father.
Thank you, Father, and thank you, Aman. With this, we are running short on time, so we got received so many questions from all of you, and I'm so happy and so proud to see that we received so many great insights and great questions. But we cannot take each one of your questions, and I'm so sorry for that, but we have something to share. We will have an interactive session on that, and there you can ask, you can interact, you can give your insights on that. So we'll proceed to that after some time. But to conclude the panel discussion of this theme, human capital investment in education, skill development and employment, we get to hear so many great insights from a great panelist right here. Today's insights were so different from what I was expecting. It was something which you are not getting in your books, or you're not getting in the internet or any website. It was the values, the ethics that makes us who we are, and that will make our human capital shine. The investment in education is not just investment in what you study. It is investment in your mindset and how you approach the world. And the investment in your skill development is not only your handwork training, not the training which is forced upon you. It is this development or the investment to which you are interested, to which provides you a better future and which provides you a platform. And with that, we would like to conclude our today's panel discussion number 2. I would like to thank my dear panelists, Father Michael Macri, Dr. Benjamin Lindo, and Ma'am Audrey Konglam for your time here and for your lovely interaction and your insights to our young people. And I would also like to thank my dear youth, my brothers and sisters, for spending your time listening to our great panelists out here. I would like to thank each one of you, all the moderators, all the technicians, everybody, for your valuable timing. Thank you so much.